Kia ora tātou, ko Fiona Grieve toka iwi. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present at Link 2024 conference this paper titled Connecting Communities, Curatorial Approaches in Collaborative Publication Design. Just to introduce a little bit about myself, I'm the Head of Department of Communication Design and Interaction Design at Auckland University of Technology. Alongside my role, I am a PhD candidate in the School of Art and Design. I have a long-standing interest in education. I'm active in supporting our colleagues in the secondary sector through a project that I do called the Ala Prima Project, building resources with colleagues for the secondary sector students and teachers. Alongside work I do supporting assessment processes in the secondary sector for NZQA. I first got an opportunity as an educator at a polytechnic here called Unitec New Zealand, and this gifted me two important pathways in education and in practice. As a young lecturer, I first met Kyra Clark. Kyra Clark's iwi is Ngāti Hau, Ngāpui. At the time, Kyra was a student, and we started collaborating together in two ways. We went on to form a studio once Kyra graduated called Threaded Studio, and before she graduated in her last year, we started an international design magazine together called Threaded Magazine. We've subsequently gone on to produce 21 issues, and this project came about because at the time Kyra recognised a gap in the way that there were platforms and promotion for students. At the time, the profession was focused on emerging practitioners, and there wasn't a forum or an opportunity for students to form community or network between each other. And so through Kyra and my shared values and our interest in lifelong learning and supporting our own individual learning and growth, we formulated the entity called Threaded, which is a shared expression of our culture. It reflects Kyra as a Māori wahine and myself as a Pākehā wahine. So for those of you that are new to Threaded, I thought it would be a good opportunity to just look at the editorial in issue 5, which is some time ago now, but I think still relevant because it offers some insights into our editorial direction, and I think it highlights the way that we collaborate and the values that still sit at the centre of this research project. So this is the editorial from edition 5. The thematic provocation was for the love of it. We wanted to acknowledge the commitment and dedication that comes through a calling or a vision. And in this instance, we worked with my grandmother, who was 90, who had demonstrated her love and commitment through cooking, preserving, gardening, bottling, and nurturing. And so we wrote our own recipe, and this is an extract that I will read that I still feel is aligned to how Kyra and I approach the way that we work. I'm going to read it because, as I mentioned, my nana was 90 at the time, so the handwriting is quite difficult, and she was very dedicated in the amount of time it took her to write this out for us. Okay, so this is our recipe from edition 5. So you will need 2 cups of liquid energy and determination, 1.5 cups of visual meaning and attitude, 1 cup of ethical, social and environmental awareness, 1 tablespoon of late nights, networking and Pinot Noir, 2 heaped teaspoons of generosity, 1 teaspoon of supported colleagues, friends and family, half a pinch of humility. Combine all dry ingredients in a cool studio space and slowly mix in the liquid. Be careful not to let your enthusiasm override your critical faculties, and if overbeaten and sticky, rest to one side and reinvent. Once combined, add an additional pinch of humility as required and change the world. serves everyone. So 16 issues later, we have aligned, and the ethos that underpins this project can be articulated by the way that we collaborate through the partnership that occurs in a number of ways. We invite guest designers to co-design specific sections with us in each issue. We also realised that one of the ways to influence emerging practitioners was to place them side by side with established practitioners, and so we invite individuals in studios here in Aotearoa and internationally who are offered 4 double-page spreads to lead and present themselves as they want to be seen. We're interested in people as designers and designers as people. Alongside these established practitioners, there is space to profile emerging practitioners in each issue. We've formulated a production model called the Associates, and this was a way for us to foster reciprocal relationships with print companies, with paper merchants, with educational and cultural organisations who have a mutual interest in fostering community and showcasing creativity. So this was the model. Here are some examples of some of the covers, including the Gatefold project, which is a micro project that happens in each issue as a way to visually expand on the thematic. Thematics are important for each issue because it's a way to unite and bring together all of the collaborators that are working together. And so this was the model effectively that we've been working on up until issue 19. And there are a couple of key turning points that changed this, and I'm just going to share these with you. So we were invited by Frigigoni to participate in a project that they were doing, a book for the Frankfurt Book Fair in Germany, and this was titled 16.2, where they invited 8 studios from around the world, from different countries, and the brief was to explore the identity and introduce who you were and where you were from. And this was an interesting turn of events for Kyra and I, because we'd spent our time with Threaded providing a platform for other practitioners to share their identity. And so this sent us on a journey which required us to have conversations, and we sought guidance from Kyra's whānau. We had worked very closely with her mother, Karen Gibbons, through each issue. And we also had sought a lot of guidance from Kyra's Kumatua and Kuia from Whakapara Marae in Northland. And so this started us on a path that really allowed our identity to start to play a part in the editorial direction of Threaded. And so as we were approaching edition 20, we always knew we wanted to return to our roots for the thematic for this issue, and so we decided that we would showcase only indigenous Māori artists and designers from Aotearoa, and that we would work with 10 practitioners. We reached out to a cultural advisory group of professional indigenous practitioners called Ngā Aho. At the time, Desna Wanga Skolum, she was the chair. We invited her to join as co-editor for this issue, and we also worked closely with Karen Wilson, a member of Ngā Aho, and this reset the kaupapa for the editorial direction, and it affirmed an intention to be culturally responsive, and this influenced not only the editorial direction but the way in which we work and partner. And so this was also the first time that we had worked on an issue that was solely designed in terms of each section, each profile, in-house in our studio. And one of the reasons that drove that is we were working with weavers, we were working with practitioners that weren't necessarily graphic designers. And so this meant that there was a cohesive graphic design unity within this issue, which I will talk further about. So after the launch of edition 20, Kyra decided to move our studio, which was based in Auckland, here in Tamaki, and return to Te Tai Tokoro, to Northland, and be closer to her whenua and her whānau. I was at the time and had been in DC for a duration of 5 years. We had opened a studio there and we were working with clients based on the East Coast in the States. And I returned to Aotearoa to take up the role I'm currently in at Auckland University of Technology. And so this brought us back into relationship with an educational organisation, and it also brought us closer to a network of practice-oriented researchers, many of you are in Brazil today. So as we were moving to edition 21, we were slowed down by COVID, and we were fortunate to have Frigigoni in Italy shipped us a whole lot of new paper stock. They were interested in doing another project with us, and so we had a shipment of bespoke paper, and so we started conversations around the thematic for the issue. We were, like many, looking at the impact of isolation and connection, and Kyra and I were on a Zoom call with her Kuia Te Pora Kufata, and she sang us the Waiata Ko Te Pū. And this introduced the Māori creation story, which was influenced from a Ngāti Hou perspective. And the fact that she'd sung us this Waiata also started to get us thinking about, when working with spiritual dimensions, how are we going to incorporate some of these elements. And this got us thinking about a more immersive experience, and from here we collaborated with sound designers to incorporate sound and augmented reality to deal with dimensions not necessarily seen. And so this really expanded the materiality in media. So coming out after edition 20 and 21 both had distinctive approaches by virtue of the fact that edition 20 we had designed and held and unified the graphic design system, whereas 21 we had worked with 14 national and international practitioners who each had their full double-page spreads to lead and present themselves. So this juxtaposition of editorial design directions really highlighted a conundrum in my role as editor and co-creative director with Kyra. And so on the one hand, we had a publication designed by one designer, which afforded a kind of control of graphic conventions, and at the same time, we realised that Threaded is founded on this idea of plurality and inclusiveness, and so we wanted to have that distinction of different voices through graphic language as well as individual perspectives, but at the same time we needed to resolve this way of consistent visual identity. And so this led to this current PhD research question, which asks what curatorial publishing approach might be applied to the development of a distinctive print-based multivocal publication that fosters communities and reflects diversity. And so let's introduce the scenario. Research demonstrates concentrated ownership in mass media and telecommunications, which threatens freedom of expression and reduces diversity. McCoy and others claim that society is increasingly characterised by polarisation, which leads to societal divisions across political and cultural dimensions. And we know this to be true. For example, here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, there are plans to review Te Tiriti o Waitangi's principles that protect Māori rights, including health improvement initiatives, ceasing race-based policies and reducing Māori language and public service. This action from the current government and our recent events, including the Hikoi to Parliament last week to protect Māori rights, is one example of polarisation. So considering polarisation and cultural division, I want to reference Professor Mary Berriman, who promotes relationships for inclusion, and she argues that through Māori and non-Māori partnerships we can recognise how culturally responsive interactions can lead to epistemological pluralism. In this context, I believe that independent publishing can support multivocal identity within communities, and this research investigates this. Including how bicultural collaborative processes can bridge perspectives and contribute to community building through editorial practices. So the project contributes to an understanding of cross-cultural collaboration through shared ideas and agreed processes. It promotes a dialogically relational and culturally responsive partnership. And thirdly, it contributes knowledge to a reconsideration of the term curatorial, moving it beyond the associations that we have with galleries and museums and collections to consider its application and meaning in the context of independent magazine publishing that operates within a community-centred framework. So undertaking the contextual review was the first phase in the PhD, and it took a trifurcate approach. Firstly, I needed to understand editorial practices in the context of mass media and its implications. Secondly, I needed to review editorial concepts by looking at a range of curatorial models. And thirdly, an investigation of visual language as identity, and to understand what distinctiveness might mean in print-based media. Through this contextual review, it so happened that I needed to do a history of independent publishing in Aotearoa, and I'll talk about this shortly as part of Appendix 2. So through this phase of research, several emergent ideas that warrant further investigation have arisen. As an umbrella, publishing as social practice. I've touched on this idea of multivocality through the distinct voice that individuals bring to partnership and collaboration, but also voice in terms of visual language and graphic design, partnership and collaboration and models. This idea of design citizenship and our responsibility to use design ethically. The concept of curatorial applied in the context of editorship and publication as exhibition space. So this design of study, it's a practice-oriented project situated in a post-positivist paradigm. Klein describes this model as valuing the subjective, intuitive and experiential knowledge of the practitioner, and the research involves through making and reflection on emerging findings. So the framework 1 uses a close reading method. This approach unpacks the ideologies, cultural assumptions and the multiple layers of meaning embedded in visual language. This analysis also extends to the examination of visual texts such as artworks and images. At this stage, the contextual review was conducted to understand publication practices in the context of mass media and critical theory, and so close reading was the framework required. The compendium has arisen out of Appendix 2. This is a living document that I realised I needed. There was a gap in the literature. There was no one place, it was very fragmented, and so to address this I've compiled a compendium of 9 sections. This was necessary in order to address information that was fragmented and didn't exist in one place. And so that then led me to realise that I would need ethical approval in order to conduct interviews with specialist curators, editors and designers. Again, I needed this depth of information in order to feed and inform the compendium. And then fourthly, utilising close reading in order to do an analysis of the 21 issues of Threaded as the fourth step. And so Framework 2 encompasses the methods utilised in the production of Threaded magazine. recognising that I would be using the practice of graphic design to work iteratively, to test and prototype visual solutions, that I will need to establish advisory groups to advise on the cultural and conceptual knowledge, including graphic designers to advise on visual language and publication design. And then fourthly, an investigation of collaborative and co-design models to foster community. So it became evident that a third framework was required, and this was to bridge the knowledge that I was collating and the material form of media, where I needed a forum for the creative practice to become a method for the investigation. And so threaded mohonga is the term used to describe this depth of inquiry, acknowledging a document that could serve as a method to record and respond to the research progress and address through practice questions and solutions. And so the aim of Volume 1 was to formulate a language system to describe and identify the specific and distinctive qualities within Threaded magazine. And so Issue 1 produced a framework, an initial sample for analysis of the 21 issues. This was an opportunity to unpack philosophy and concepts, understand audience and community, the aesthetic and visual conventions, process and collaboration, and sections that address thematic and visual language and technology. And so at this point in the research, I can see that many emerging ideas warrant further investigation. I want to leave with this encompassing idea of publishing as a domain of social practice, and close with Calancy's Cope, who links publishing to the most essential of human acts in structuring and supporting the formalisation of social knowledge and navigating the construction of common knowledge and cultural heritage. I want to acknowledge the mahi of Kyra Clark and the creative partnership that underpins these next steps in the research and the research to date. I'd like to thank the role that Professor Hinamato McNeil plays as a cultural advisor in this study, and my two supervisors, Professor Welby Ings and Associate Professor Marcus Mortensen-Stegall. I am grateful for the calibre of their experience and support in guiding this project. I wish you all much dancing, barbecue and enjoyment in Brazil. Ngā mihi nui, obrigado, and ciao ciao.